The state of Ohio is not requiring people to be vaccinated.
But the state will give you some incentives to get the COVID-19 vaccine. How the new Vax to School program works. Ohio lawmakers are pushing to make it illegal for the state to issue any type of mask, vaccine, or testing mandates. We'll break down House Bill 425 and a legal challenge to the new Ohio legislative maps. Thank you so much for joining us for Face the State this morning. I'm Tracy Townsend. Governor Mike DeWine is hoping more incentives will boost COVID-19 vaccination numbers in our state, specifically for young people. Vax to School is a new program that will be open to all Ohioans ages 12 to 25. Those who qualify must have received at least one dose of the vaccine, which makes them eligible for one of 5 $100,000 scholarships that can be for any college or university or for career, technical, or job training education. There will also be the chance to win one of 50 scholarships valued at $10,000 apiece. Do the math, that's $1 million coming out of the COVID Relief Fund. The governor, on the heels of the Vax-A-Million lottery, says he hopes this will help boost the number of young people who are vaccinated.
People's minds are changing. Now, look, some of it is because they may know a friend who died. They may know someone who got really deathly sick from COVID. It may be any number of things. So we'll never know exactly what pushes people over the line to get vaccinated. Ultimately, it's their decision.
The governor says that since August, there have been more than 42,000 confirmed cases among children ages 5 to 17. Now, when it comes to fighting COVID-19 health mandates, conservative Ohio lawmakers are taking their efforts a step further. A new proposed law would prohibit mask, vaccine, and testing mandates pretty much everywhere except hospitals or healthcare facilities. Although it was just introduced, 10 TV's Lindsay Mills reports on the details of a bill and what our legal experts have to say.
This is House Bill 425. It's the latest COVID-related proposal to be introduced to Ohio's General Assembly. It would affect all different types of businesses, public and private schools, and any type of state agency. It would block things like testing, vaccine requirements, not just for COVID-19, and mask mandates.
Taking aim directly at measures intended to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Micah Berman is an associate professor for public health law at OSU.
So unlike some other bills, this applies very broadly to essentially any employer, either public or private.
Earlier this month, President Joe Biden announced federal vaccine and testing requirements for employers with more than 100 workers. If HB 425 were to become law and the federal rule stands to require vaccines or weekly tests in businesses of a certain size, which law do we follow?
So the basic story is this.
For that, Peter Shane, a law professor also from OSU.
Federal law under the Constitution takes precedence over state law.
Even though it's very early in the process, some fear this will tie even more hands from making decisions, as we have seen with SB 22, which now allows the General Assembly to rescind any health mandate by Ohio's executive branch.
The way that it's written to essentially imply that the COVID vaccines are not fully vetted, or that there's some technology in them that we need to be worried about. I think that's just really feeding into dangerous conspiracy theories about these vaccines. And I think it's disappointing to see that coming out of the General Assembly.
Lindsay Mills, 10 TV News.
We reached out to both sponsors of this bill, and we will certainly let you know if they get back to us for comment. Now, the Biden administration's vaccine mandate is for companies, again, with more than 100 employees. But what about companies that have fewer workers? 10 TV's Clay Gordon talked with one local business owner who's now requiring staff to get vaccinated.
Wolf's Ridge Brewery in Columbus celebrates 8 years in operation this weekend. Well, for the last 2 years during the pandemic,
it feels like those have been 8 in and of themselves. So yeah, it's been tough.
tough on his employees.
All the ups and downs that we've dealt with, the uncertainty about not only health, but employment, things like that. It's been a constant stress for them and us.
Less than 5% of his 72-person staff is not vaccinated. Suter says it's been 1 week since they implemented a vaccine mandate for employees.
Sub 5% has a disproportionately large impact on the rest of the employees and the business overall. So, when we took a step back and looked at it, we said this has to happen.
So where do other businesses and industries fall in this debate? Well, we talked to the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, and they say right now it varies.
It's a mixed bag, and there's a lot of confusion.
Confusion over which rules to follow. The upcoming Biden administration's vaccine mandates for companies with 100 or more employees, or a bill circulating in the Ohio House limiting employers' rights with vaccination rules.
And also, the legislature hasn't passed any bill yet. So all we can say right now is conduct business as usual. You can require your employees to be vaccinated if you want to. That's the current state of the law. You don't have to.
Suter's decision was hard to make. It could mean he will lose some employees.
If we do lose those people, that's okay for the benefit of our business at the end of the day. And hopefully that doesn't happen, and it doesn't look like it will.
And certainly there are a lot of employers who say, I would never require my employees to be vaccinated. That's their choice to make. But there are also a lot of employers who, whether or not they would like to potentially require a vaccine, recognize that they're already struggling to fill jobs. They already have workforce shortages.
In Columbus, Clay Gordon, 10 TV News.
This week, 2 of Ohio's congressional reps tested positive for COVID-19. Democrat Tim Ryan tweeted saying he had mild symptoms, that he is vaccinated. Congressman Ryan got a lot of questions about his experience, so he held a news conference to talk about it.
Last week I wasn't feeling wasn't exactly sure, out and about on the campaign trail, and thought I had maybe some allergies, and took on 3 different occasions, got 3 negative tests, 2 of them the rapids, one was the 48-hour more comprehensive, and continued to not feel well. And then on Sunday, I lost my taste and knew that was, not anything normal. So I went for another test on Monday, and that's when I've got the report that I was testing positive. Want to just give a huge shout out to Mercy Health, and a huge shout out to all of the healthcare workers across the country, having been with them up close, over the past week. On multiple occasions. They are burnout, and it's something we all need to be responsible for, getting our vaccinations and making sure we do our part to try to relieve the burden. They're going morning, noon, and night consistently on the front lines. And so I want to make sure that, 1, we thank them, but 2, we try to do our part to reduce the loads that are going into the hospitals.
Meantime, Republican Congressman Bob Latta also tested positive after being around someone who tested positive. Latta says he is fully vaccinated and experiencing no symptoms. Unresponsive and not prepared. Those are findings from a state audit on the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. They underscore what 10 Investigates first revealed and reported in May. We first told you that audit was underway earlier this summer in response to the number of issues the public reported with Ohio's unemployment system. State Auditor Keith Faber says the pandemic exposed cracks in that system that have been in place for decades. Those include being underfunded and under-equipped to handle the amount of claims processed during the pandemic. The 138-page audit offers recommendations for ODJFS to study further. The director says in response that the office has already started to make changes to shore up the process for customers and to have a plan moving forward. The director says a big piece of this is updating technology, and that is also underway. The pool of candidates hoping to represent Ohio in the U.S. Senate is growing. Up next, I talked one-on-one with the newest person to throw his hat into the ring. Meantime, another representative seat will be up for grabs. Hear why Anthony Gonzalez is getting out of the game of politics. Ohio State Senator Matt Dolan has entered the U.S. Senate race. crowding the field of Republicans hoping to fill Senator Rob Portman's seat next year. Dolan updated his Twitter bio Sunday night. He also wrote an op-ed saying he wants to share his conservative principles. I talked with him this week about what made him decide to run and what he wants to do if he's elected.
I've been in public service and private service, so commitment to making Ohio a stronger place has been in my blood. And as I traveled the state during my Ohio Matters tour, it became very clear to me that Ohioans want this race to be about them. They want to know that someone's going to go to Washington and fight for their jobs, fight to make them secure, fight to make Ohio an attractive place for outsiders to invest and innovators to come.
Also vying for that GOP nomination, former Ohio Treasurer Josh Mandel, author and venture capitalist J.D. Vance, former state GOP chair Jane Timken, car dealer Bernie Moreno, and investment banker Mike Gibbons. You see them all there. U.S. Rep. Tim Ryan and attorney Morgan Harper are running on the Democratic side of that race, so we'll be watching that one. Republican Congressman Anthony Gonzalez is opening up about his decision not to seek re-election. He made the announcement on Twitter. You might remember he was elected back in 2018 to the 16th Congressional District. The former Ohio State Buckeye says he just couldn't keep working with the way politics is running right now, especially within his own party. He is one of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach former President Donald Trump. We talked with him about why he made the decision and what he wants to finish before he leaves.
It is very bittersweet to not run for re-election. But the truth is, when we think about what kind of life we want for our two kids, for our marriage, what kind of dad do I want to be, what kind of husband do I want to be, and how that looks for us, that the honest truth is, we have to do this. It's the right thing for us. It's sad to go, certainly, but ultimately, if I'm not willing to put my family first, then what good am I? I'll tell you, our focus as an office has always been to put our constituents first and to serve our veterans. Our veterans have been willing to, or in some instances, paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country, and so we believe we have an obligation to serve them. And so we're working on some veteran homelessness and mental health initiatives right now, and I hope to finish those off before we exit. But if we aren't able to get those done, by next year, then hopefully whoever takes the seat will pick them up because there's universal agreement across the 16th district that we have to do right by our veterans. Additionally, we've been working on some good workforce training pieces of legislation with Senator Portman for quite a while. Hope to get those done as well. But again, you can't always control everything in Congress.
Women candidates in the state of Ohio are working to show they are doing more than playing politics and turning to the Matriots and its new CEO for help. Emily Quick-Shriver is the full-time chief executive officer of the nonpartisan organization, which is endorsing candidates in every kind of non-judicial race this fall, from school boards to village councils to township trustees and state Senate seats. Quick-Shriver told me women should have a much more visible role in leading this state.
The last study that we did had about 26.5% of the elected seats in our state held by women. Our population, as we know now, is about 51% women within the state. So our government is not reflecting the population. And we've known that for a very long time, right? That a representative government should reflect the populations that put it there. And that we should also have the opportunity to have different viewpoints so that we can come at these really challenging problems like redistricting, like the business of politics that we've talked about, so that we can come at it from different angles, but converse about it and come out with a better outcome. Getting elected is not enough, and that's what we're learning about our elected officials, right? They need to be able to have confidence back in their district. They need to have the availability of funds in their campaigns and in their committees to be able to negotiate downtown. And so one of the things that the Matriots will be thinking about is how do we help empower our candidates, not just get them over the finish line to become an elected official, but then to really have the confidence and the moxie to be able to negotiate downtown. And I think that is an incredibly beneficial thing that the Matriots is poised to do, and really uniquely so for women in the state.
When you say negotiate downtown, make it plain. What do you mean?
I mean, be in the room where it happens in the crafting of legislation, and to be able to say, you know what, this is what my constituents want, and you all should follow my lead, instead of having to be kind of on the back foot in the negotiations.
When we think about the pandemic and women trying to be in the room where it's happening, where they're talking about vaccinations and what's going to be on the next list of vaccines, specifically the COVID-19 vaccine, and being able to weigh in on those conversations when you have women who have medical background, but you're in the room with people who perhaps do not.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're outnumbered.
Well, and similarly, we know that women are the #1 primary caregivers in the state. We know that they're the #1 consumers in the state. And so there should be women in the room talking about, if we're talking about a vaccination, we're also talking about our children. We're talking about childcare providers. We're talking about pediatricians and pediatricians' offices. Those kinds of things, women as the primary caregivers in our state should be represented, and their voice should be heard in the negotiations and in the drafting of policies that are going to affect the people we care for.
Matriots endorsements, according to their website, go to Ohio women running for political office, regardless of political affiliation. Candidates must support legislation and public policy promoting an economy in which women can prosper, communities are safe and healthy, sustainable opportunities for women are available, and human, civil, and reproductive rights will be safeguarded. You can learn more about Matriots at 10tv.com. I have a link for you to their website at ours. You know it, 10tv.com. All right, the fight over Ohio's redistricting map is going to the state Supreme Court. The League of Women Voters of Ohio filed an appeal. The Ohio Redistricting Commission passed the 4-year maps last week. The suit calls the map extreme partisan gerrymandering. Governor Mike DeWine's spokesperson didn't want to comment on the lawsuit. Some state lawmakers are taking aim at the district lines as well. State Rep. Paula Hicks Hudson of Toledo is calling for hearings on House Bill 313. The legislation has been untouched in committee since May. Hicks Hudson says the bill would strengthen transparency requirements in the redistricting process. The former Toledo mayor also says it would help Ohio fulfill its duties under reforms voters passed in 2015 and 2018.
It's made it kind of a rush mishmash of a process for citizens, which was not what the citizens wanted in 2015 or 2018 when they passed, and asked for the constitutional amendments to do redistricting in an open and fair way. We will have maps, but will those be the maps that the citizens wanted? And I hazard to think that they won't be, because it's such a rush job and it didn't have to be. What's happened is that instead of you electing your representative, your representative is picking the voter. And that's not the way democracy is supposed to work. If I don't think that I have to be responsive to the phone calls of the people who put me here in this seat, then, I can do whatever I want to. And I think the bigger problem is that we are losing sight of what we should be doing in Ohio to make Ohio a better place for people to live, grow, and to raise their families.
Some Republicans, like Senate President Matt Huffman, have argued the maps are constitutional and that they took into account Democrats' wishes. There's anger and frustration after a federal court ruling on lawsuits connected to the now deceased Dr. Richard Strauss. Governor Mike DeWine weighs in on the judge's comments about the statute of limitations. A federal judge dismissed some of the biggest unsettled lawsuits in connection to now deceased OSU team Dr. Richard Strauss. The case is centered around Ohio State's failure to stop decades-old sexual abuse by Strauss. The judge said Strauss's crimes fell beyond the statute of limitations, which is 2 years for a civil case. Here's what Governor Mike DeWine had to say about that.
My basic instinct, quite candidly, is if there is a case to be made that this is such a heinous crime the victims are so impacted. My belief is there should be no statute of limitations.
One of the victims of Dr. Richard Strauss's abuse case is talking about that judge's decision. Michael Schick said he was fondled by Strauss during physicals while he was on the OSU wrestling team in 1988. U.S. District Judge Michael H. Watson said the case couldn't go forward because Strauss's crimes were beyond the statute of limitations, which is 2 years for a civil case.
I'm overwhelmingly full of anger right now, to be honest. I'm angry at the judge. I'm angry at Ohio State. I'm angry at my coaches.
Ohio State previously reached a $47 million settlement with 185 survivors. This recent case involved plaintiffs who did not accept the settlement, claiming they were owed more than what the university was offering. Strauss died in 2005. The Ohio Supreme Court is weighing in on whether a child can be charged in adult court with crimes the state didn't prove in juvenile court. This week, the court heard oral arguments from both prosecutors and a defense attorney representing a 19-year-old who was convicted for a string of violent crimes. Ohio's Attorney General says how the court decides this case could have a larger impact on how crimes involving juveniles are handled. Here's Chief Investigative Reporter Bennett Haberly.
A case must mean the set of charges that are eligible for transfer. I think adopting the government's view that case is defined by a set of facts.
At the center of this case before the Ohio Supreme Court is a fight over how cases can or cannot be moved from juvenile to adult court. If you believe the prosecutors and the Ohio Attorney General's office,
case means, at the very least, all the charges pending against the defendant. These charges are still pending, and so they're bound over with the rest of the case.
But defense attorney Timothy Hackett is arguing a different interpretation of state law. He claims the rights of his client Eddie Burns were violated when prosecutors unfairly sent over unproven charges in juvenile court to adult court. Burns is currently serving a 27-year prison sentence after being convicted of several felonies, including aggravated robbery and attempted murder.
Mr. Burns, you beat me so bad that the braces I have to wear on my left leg, you stomped me so hard the brace broke half in two.
Della Watts was one of Burns' victims. During his sentencing hearing in 2019, she spoke about her husband, 81-year-old Willie Watts, who never recovered from the beating he suffered.
And you knew he could not fight you back. You stumped him in his head, face, with your heavy boots.
Willie died weeks later, but a medical examiner was unable to determine if a previous health issue or the assault from Burns contributed to his death. Burns was also accused of robbing a Cleveland TV news crew. Among the victims, now current 10 TV reporter Lacey Crisp. During his sentencing hearing, Burns said this.
I would like to apologize to all my victims and share my time on.
But his attorney is now arguing that facing 56 charges and the potential of decades in prison, Burns felt compelled to accept the plea deal. His attorney argued to the court that prosecutors violated Eddie's statutory and constitutional rights when it criminally indicted him on counts that were never transferred to adult court.
This is a defense lawyer doing what lawyers do.
Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost said if the Ohio Supreme Court were to rule in Burns' favor, it could have rippling effects on other juvenile cases. He'd like to see the state's high court stand with the state.
The intention of the law passed by the General Assembly here is very clear. It says that upon a bind over, the case is supposed to go, not pieces of the case, to adult court.
The Chief Justice said she would take these arguments under consideration. She did not give a timeline on when a decision might be reached. It could be as much as 6 months. Reporting outside the Ohio Supreme Court, Bennett Haberly, 10 TV News.
And we thank you all for being here with us today. We'll see you back here next Sunday morning.